You know that feeling of screaming underwater, where no one hears you and the air slowly runs out? That was exactly how I felt every single day waking up in that house, staring at the ceiling stained by the typical Seattle dampness. I am 37 years old, but when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who had already given up on shining, faded by routine and the lack of love. The worst part was not the exhaustion of working all day hunched over doing nails, nor the strong smell of acetone that seemed permanently etched into my skin. The worst part was knowing I depended financially on that man sleeping beside me, snoring as if my sadness did not exist. Before I tell you how my life turned upside down and how I found strength where I least expected it, click right here on the button to follow the Forbidden Romances channel, because this story will show you that it is never too late to rediscover yourself. My name is Rachel. I have been a nail technician for 10 years, and to society, I am just an ordinary wife from a working-class neighborhood. My husband, Roger, works at a manufacturing plant in the industrial district and likes to say he is the man of the house, which in practice means he controls the big money, and I am left with the crumbs to buy groceries and pay the small bills. I lived in a vicious cycle of forced gratitude. After all, he never let me go without, except for respect, affection, and loyalty. It had been 3 months since I found out. It took no detective work. It was the smell. He would come home with a sweet, cheap perfume that was not mine, lingering on the nylon jacket he wore to ride his motorcycle. I would wash that jacket, scrubbing hard, crying over the utility sink, as if I could wash away the betrayal along with the factory grime. But I never said a word. I swallowed my tears along with a cold dinner, because the fear of being alone and homeless was greater than my dignity. I felt invisible, a piece of furniture he used to keep the house clean and his clothes ironed. My clients at the salon would vent about their loves and heartaches, and I would simply nod, hiding my own private hell. Who would look at me? A blonde nail technician with overgrown roots, calloused hands, and the lowered gaze of someone apologizing for existing. On that Tuesday morning, a fine rain was falling outside, that eternal gray that covers the city and seems to seep into your soul. I took my crowded city bus downtown, squeezed between wet umbrellas, feeling an exhaustion that went straight to my bones. I did not know it, but that would be the last day of the old Rachel. Destiny was waiting for me in a grocery store checkout line, ready to extend the hand I so desperately needed. I walked into the grocery store just to buy the basics for dinner, dragging my feet down the cold aisles illuminated by those white lights that give you a headache. I was in my salon uniform, black pants and a lilac polo shirt that had seen better days, feeling like the most uninteresting person in the world. The checkout line was miles long, typical of a late afternoon in Seattle, and I sighed, resting my heavy basket on the floor and taking out my cell phone to pretend I had important messages to read, when in reality, it was just the family group chat forwarding chain messages. That was when I smelled a different perfume in the air, something woody and sophisticated that did not match the smell of fresh bread and cleaning supplies in that place. I raised my eyes and saw the woman standing in front of me in line. She looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine or a primetime drama. She was wearing an impeccable beige trench coat, her brown hair pulled back in a loose but elegant bun, and she was holding a bottle of wine that cost what I earned in an entire week of hard work. I must have been staring, because she turned around suddenly, and our eyes met, and I felt my face burn with shame, ready to apologize for being indiscreet. But instead of looking at me with disdain, she smiled, and her clear eyes sparkled with a kindness that completely disarmed me. She tilted her head slightly to the side, analyzing my face, and said with a firm, velvety voice that my hair was very beautiful, that it had a shade of blonde that illuminated my tired face. I froze, not knowing whether to look behind me to see if she was talking to someone else, because it had been years, maybe a decade, since anyone had complimented anything about me, much less such an imposing stranger. I stammered a timid thank you, running my hand through my loose strands, feeling my heart race in my chest as if I were a teenager. She kept looking at me, her focus never wavering, and added that it was rare to see someone with such a sweet energy in such a stressful grocery store line. That was like water in the desert for me. I was so used to being the betrayed wife, the invisible nail tech, the woman who serves and is not served, that this simple comment made me feel alive. A sudden courage, one I did not even know I possessed, sprouted in my stomach, a crazy desire to not let that moment end there, in the coldness of the express lane. My hands were shaking a little as I opened my purse, fumbling among keys and nail files, looking for my professional card that I almost never had the courage to hand out to women of that social class. I held the small rectangular paper out to her, feeling the cold sweat on the palm of my hand, and said with a trembling voice that I was a nail technician and that I would love to take care of her hand someday, if she wanted, of course. It was an impulsive gesture, almost a cry for help disguised as personal marketing, and for a second I feared she would laugh at my audacity or throw the card in the nearest trash can. But she took the card with the tips of her fingers, her nails perfectly manicured, and read my name aloud, Rachel, as if she were savoring every syllable. She tucked the card into the pocket of her trench coat, not in her wallet, but close to her body, and shot me a look that made my legs weak, a mix of curiosity and something more intense that I could not decipher. She said her name was Victoria, and that she was indeed in need of someone with magic hands, because the professionals at the luxury salons were too technical and lacked a human touch. The cashier called her turn, breaking our spell, and I stood there, watching her pay for her groceries with natural elegance. As she paid, she turned around one last time and winked at me, a complicit gesture that seemed to say this was the beginning of a secret just between us. I paid for my groceries on autopilot, without even checking my change, my head spinning and a silly smile that I could not wipe off my face. I walked out of the store, and the fine rain even seemed less freezing. The city lights seemed brighter, all because a powerful woman had truly seen me. On the bus ride back home, I held my cell phone tightly, hoping, praying quietly that she would not lose the card, that she would actually call me. I felt ridiculous giving so much importance to a 5-minute encounter, but my soul was starving, and Victoria had given me the first crumbs of attention. I looked at the foggy glass and saw the reflection of my own face, trying to see the beauty she claimed to have seen. I got home and the contrast was brutal. Roger was sprawled on the couch, the television blaring, and he did not even turn his head when I walked in with the heavy bags cutting into my fingers. He asked if I had brought his beer, without even asking how my day was, and that indifference that used to hurt me, in that moment, filled me with anger. I looked at him, at his protruding belly and his bored face, and I thought of Victoria's elegance, her scent, the way she made me feel important. I put the groceries away in the cupboard, slamming the doors a little harder than necessary, feeling a new adrenaline rushing through my veins. I was no longer just Roger's wife. I was Rachel, the woman with beautiful hair, the woman who had caught the attention of someone superior. I went to take a shower, and as the hot water fell, I could not stop imagining the phone ringing, creating 1,000 scenarios in my head where I was not this sad, fated woman. I lay in bed facing the wall, far away from him, and stared at my cell phone screen in the dark, with the brightness turned all the way down so as not to wake my husband. Every notification made my heart jump, but it was just the phone carrier, or the family group chat, and the anxiety began to mix with a fear that it had all been just an illusion. Was she going to call me? Or was I going to wake up tomorrow and everything would go back to being gray and dull, just like it always had been? The next day dawned with that gray, damp light typical of Seattle, making you want to stay in bed, but necessity pushed me out of the sheets before 7 in the morning. I prepared Roger's breakfast on autopilot, listening to the sound of his spoon hitting the mug as he complained about the weather, the traffic, his boss, everything except his own lack of character. I looked at him and tried to feel something, maybe love, maybe anger, but I only felt an immense emptiness, as if I were looking at a stranger who had invaded my kitchen. I went to the salon with my cell phone in the pocket of my smock, vibrating at every phantom notification my mind created, in a silent torture that lasted all morning. With every client I attended to, filing nails and trimming cuticles, my thoughts flew to the woman from the grocery store, to the elegance of that beige trench coat and the silent promise of that look. Had she lost the card? Had she regretted it and found my attitude vulgar? Insecurity gnawed at my stomach, making me doubt that someone like her could be interested in a neighborhood nail tech like me. During my lunch break, I ate a cold meal in the back of the salon, sitting on a plastic stool, staring blankly at the black screen of my cell phone on the table. Susan, who works at the station next to mine, noticed my restlessness and let out one of her venomous little laughs, asking if I was waiting for news of an inheritance or a lover. I forced a tight smile and said it was just family trouble, hiding my secret as if it were a precious jewel that she, with her bitterness, would certainly try to steal or tarnish. The afternoon dragged on painfully slowly, and the rain outside thickened, turning the streets into rivers of mud and despair. I caught myself looking in the salon mirror, analyzing the fine wrinkles around my eyes, my hair that desperately needed a deep conditioning treatment, and I felt foolish. An aging Cinderella waiting for a fairy godmother who would never come. Who was I trying to fool? Women like Victoria do not care about women like me. We are just the labor force, the invisible ones who serve the coffee and paint their nails so they can shine in important meetings. I walked back home under a broken umbrella, fighting against the wind, and arrived soaked, with freezing feet and my spirits on the floor. The house was empty. Roger had not arrived yet, and the silence of those walls oppressed me more than any scream. I took a hot shower, trying to wash away the disappointment, and put on my oldest pajamas, the flannel ones that were already pilling, accepting that my night would be just another lonely night in front of the television. When Roger arrived, the smell of alcohol walked in with him, mixed with that sweet perfume that was not mine, and that made me nauseous. He did not even look me in the eyes. He went straight to the shower, humming a country song, acting as if his life were wonderful, while mine crumbled silently on the couch. Anger began to bubble inside me. A hot, dense anger. Not just at his betrayal, but at my own cowardice for being there, accepting those crumbs of a life I had not chosen. I prepared dinner with sharp movements, banging the pots, wanting him to notice, wanting him to ask what was wrong. But he was too busy on his cell phone, laughing at idiotic videos his friends sent. I sat at the worn Formica table, looked at my plate of food, and felt a knot in my throat that prevented me from swallowing anything. I was surrounded, trapped in that small kitchen, trapped in that bankrupt marriage, trapped in my own financial dependence that felt like a chain around my ankle. It was in this rock-bottom moment, when I had already lost hope and was washing the dishes with tears in my eyes, that I heard the sound. It was not the standard text message chime. It was the specific sound of the messaging app, that ding that echoed in the silent kitchen like a gunshot. I dried my hands on the dish towel, rushing, almost knocking over a glass, and ran to the living room where I had left my cell phone charging. My heart felt like it was going to leap out of my mouth when I unlocked the screen with trembling fingers and saw the notification shining there. It was an unknown number, with an artistic black and white profile picture showing only half a face and an enigmatic smile. I opened the message, holding my breath, and there it was. Hello, Rachel. This is Victoria from the grocery store. Do you still have room in your schedule to save my hands? I read and reread those words 10 times, feeling a wave of heat rise up my neck and flush my cheeks. It was not a dream. It was not a delusion of my needy mind. She had remembered. She had kept the card. She had reached out to me. I looked at Roger on the couch, scratching his belly and burping loudly, and for the first time in years, I felt a genuine smile sprout on my lips, a smile of someone who has a secret, someone who has an exit door, even if it is only for an hour at a beauty salon. I typed the response with all the care in the world, deleting and rewriting so as not to seem desperate, but maintaining professionalism. Good evening, Victoria. It will be a pleasure to assist you. I have an opening tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Does that work? I sent it and stared at the screen, watching the typing bubble appear almost immediately, feeling a butterfly in my stomach that I thought had died in my adolescence. Perfect. I will be there. And Rachel? Wear that red lipstick that matches your boldness in giving me the card. See you tomorrow. Her final message made me let out a loud sigh, so audible that Roger finally looked at me and asked, "What's the matter? Did you win the lottery?" I looked at him, with the cell phone pressed tightly against my chest, and replied with a terrifying calm, "No, I just got a new client." But inside, I knew I had won something much bigger. I had gained hope. I woke up even before the alarm clock went off, my stomach churning with a mixture of anxiety and euphoria that I had not felt since my wedding day. Only this time, the reason was not a white dress, but a manicure client. The weather in Seattle was classic, the sky completely overcast with a promise of heavy rain. But inside my bedroom, it felt like the sun was shining just for me. I jumped out of bed carefully so as not to wake Roger, who was breathing heavily beside me, and went to the front of my closet, staring at my humble clothes as if I were choosing a wardrobe for the Oscars. I ran my hand over the hangers, feeling the worn fabric of my knit blouses, and a sharp frustration hit me. Nothing there seemed good enough to face Victoria's natural elegance. I opted for my usual black uniform, but chose the pants that fit best, ironed my shirt until there was not a single crease left, and trembling slightly, grabbed the red lipstick that had been forgotten in the back of my makeup drawer. I applied the lipstick carefully, looking in the mirror and finding it strange to see that woman with the bold mouth staring back at me, feeling for the first time in a long time, a little bit dangerous. I left the house without drinking coffee, nauseous with nerves, and arrived at the salon 30 minutes earlier than usual, which made Susan, my workstation neighbor, raise her drawn-on eyebrows in suspicion. The salon still had that smell of cleaning supplies and stale coffee, and I started organizing my table with a manic perfectionism, aligning the nail polishes by color tone, checking 3 times if the cuticle nippers were sterilized in the autoclave. I wanted everything to be impeccable. I wanted my small workspace not to betray the simplicity of my life. Susan, who never let anything slide, leaned against my table with a cup of coffee in her hand, and that side smile she used when she wanted to distill venom. She looked at my red mouth, then at my hair, which I had blown out with extra care, and uttered the phrase I feared. "Wow, Rachel, who did you get so dressed up for? Did Roger finally decide to take you out to dinner? Or are you waiting for the mayor of the city?" Her mocking tone made me blush, and I felt that old shame of trying to be something I was not. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and answered without looking her in the eyes that I just wanted to feel good about myself. But Susan was not satisfied. She laughed, a shrill sound that echoed in the empty salon, and commented that a nail technician does not need red lipstick. She needs a strong back, and that I should be careful not to look like what I am not. That hurt, a precise pinprick to my insecurity, as if she knew I felt like a fraud trying to impress a wealthy woman. I ignored her poison and continued wiping the table. But inside I was crumbling, questioning if I really did look ridiculous with that vibrant lipstick on a rainy Tuesday. Was Victoria going to think I was desperate? Was she going to laugh at me as soon as she walked through the door? Doubt is cruel. It plants seeds in our minds that grow quickly, and for a moment, I had the urge to run to the bathroom and wash my face, to go back to being the dull, faded Rachel I always was. The clock on the wall seemed to move in slow motion, each second dragging by like a Chinese water torture. 9:30, 9:45, 9:50. My heart was beating so hard I thought the clients in the other chairs could hear it. I looked at the glass door every time I heard an engine on the street, sweating cold, mentally rehearsing what I was going to say, how I was going to greet her, terrified of stuttering or saying something foolish like a simpleton. Susan went back to her table and started attending to an older lady from the neighborhood, but I could feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting for me to stumble. The salon atmosphere, with the noise of hair dryers and local gossip, felt far too small for the grandness of the visit I was expecting. I felt like an actress about to step onto the stage without having memorized her lines, exposed and vulnerable. When it was 2 minutes to 10 o'clock, the weather outside closed in completely and the heavy rain began to fall, pounding hard against the asphalt. I looked out at the street through the wet storefront window, thinking that maybe she would not come, that maybe the rain was the perfect excuse for her to cancel and leave me there with my painted face and my silly hope. Sadness started trying to take over, that voice in my head saying, "I told you so. She is way out of your league." But then, cutting through the gray curtain of water on the street, a massive black luxury SUV, the kind you only see in movies, turned the corner slowly. It contrasted violently with the economy cars and delivery motorcycles parked in front of the salon. The vehicle gleamed under the streetlights turned on by the dark day, gliding silently until it stopped right in front of the glass door. The entire salon went quiet, literally stopped. The hairdryer in the back turned off, the clients stopped gossiping over their magazines, and Susan froze with her nail file in the air, her mouth open, staring at the strange woman as if seeing an apparition. I felt tiny behind my white Formica table, with my simple little towels and tools, thinking that place was not worthy of receiving someone like her. I wanted to hide under the table, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Victoria did not pay attention to the curious and shocked stares of the others. To her, it seemed like I was the only person in that room. She found my face, smiled that side smile that made my stomach do flips, and walked toward me. The sound of her heels clicking on the cheap ceramic tiles was rhythmic and authoritative. Click, clack, click, announcing that she was arriving to take possession of that appointment, and perhaps of my sanity. She stopped in front of my table, took off the dark sunglasses she wore even on a gray day, and hung them on the neckline of her coat, revealing a tired but incredibly seductive gaze. She said good morning in that firm, raspy voice, and I almost could not answer. My voice came out as a trembling thread that made me want to die of embarrassment. Susan, beside me, pretended to organize her polishes, but I knew her ears were perked up, dying to figure out how I knew this woman. Victoria took off her heavy coat and draped it over the back of the simple plastic chair with a disconcerting naturalness, revealing a white silk blouse underneath that discreetly highlighted the curves of her body. She was 55 years old, but possessed a vitality and a firmness in her posture that many 20-year-olds lacked. It was a mature, lived-in beauty that intimidated and attracted in equal measure. I felt underdressed, even after spending hours preparing myself, feeling like a little girl playing grown-up next to a real woman. She sat in front of me, and the physical proximity hit me like a punch. I could see the details of her perfect makeup, the outline of her full lips, and her well-cared-for skin. She looked at my mouth and smiled more openly, saying I had obeyed and worn the red lipstick, and that the color looked divine on me. The compliment was spoken in a low tone, almost a secret, and I blushed violently, feeling the heat rise through my ears, grateful and terrified at the same time. I asked for permission to take her hands, trying to control the tremor in my own hands, praying not to drop anything. When she rested her hands on the small white towel, the contrast was glaring and painful. Her hands were soft, with pale, hydrated skin, adorned with a gold ring featuring a green stone that sparkled under the fluorescent light. My hands, holding hers, looked rough, overworked, the hands of someone who cleans, scrubs, and serves. I started the procedure by removing her old nail polish, a classic nude, and the silence between us was not heavy. It was charged with a static electricity. I felt her gaze wandering over my face, my hair, my modest neckline, a meticulous analysis that stripped me bare without removing a single piece of clothing. I tried to focus on the cuticles, the technique, the work, but her presence was an overwhelming distraction. At one point, Susan could not hold back and asked, her voice dripping with falseness, if she was new to the neighborhood, trying to fish for information. Victoria did not even turn her head to answer. She kept looking at me and said dryly that no, she lived in the upscale part of the city, and had crossed all of Seattle just to be attended to by Rachel. That answer was a slap in the face to Susan and a caress to my bruised ego, making me feel special, chosen. I looked at Victoria, surprised by her defense, and she winked at me, confirming that this was a game between the two of us, and that the rest of the world was merely an audience. While I filed her nails, shaping them as she requested, we began to converse quietly. She asked how long I had been doing this, if I liked it, and her questions were not protocol. She seemed genuinely interested in my small, dull life. I finished the cuticle work and grabbed the lotion for the final massage before painting. It was in that moment, when the cold lotion touched her warm skin and my fingers began to massage the palm of her hand, that the mood shifted. Her breathing became slightly more audible, and I felt a shiver run up her arm under my touch. Right there, at that neighborhood salon table, with the rain beating against the glass outside, something dangerous and irreversible was about to happen. I began to massage her hand with the hydrating lotion, making slow circular motions in the center of her palm, feeling the texture of her skin, which was surprisingly soft and warm. I usually did this on autopilot, thinking about my grocery list or the bus schedule, but with Victoria it was different. Every inch of skin I touched seemed to send an electric shock straight to my spine. She closed her eyes and let out a deep sigh, tilting her head slightly back, as if that simple touch were the best thing that had happened in her day. The silence between us changed quality, transitioning from awkward to intimate, heavy, loaded with meanings I still did not completely understand. I continued the massage, moving up her long fingers, and she opened her eyes slowly, fixing that clear, piercing gaze directly on my face, unblinking. She said, in a low, raspy voice, that it had been a very long time since anyone had touched her with such care, that people usually only touched her to demand things or take something from her. That sentence caught me off guard, revealing a loneliness I never imagined could exist in such a wealthy, powerful woman, and I felt a tightness in my chest, a sudden urge to care for that sadness hidden behind designer sunglasses. I asked, trying to be casual, if her husband did not give her massages, and regretted it in the same second, thinking I had crossed the line of professional boundaries. She let out a dry laugh, completely devoid of humor, and looked at the thick gold wedding band she still wore on her right hand, twisting it with her finger. She told me she had been separated for 2 years, but that the marriage had ended long before that, turning into a bankrupt enterprise where the partners only shared a roof and social appearances. She said her ex-husband was a man who loved her status but despised her strength, and that she had chosen the solitude of an enormous house over living accompanied by someone who tried to dim her light. I listened to this fascinated, absorbing every word, seeing in her a mirror of what I wished I had the courage to do with my own life. Then, she turned the tables and asked about me, pointing with her chin to the thin, worn wedding band on my ring finger, asking if I was happy in my marriage or just accustomed to it. The question was direct, surgical, and I felt my stomach churn, the lie ready on the tip of my tongue to defend appearances, like I always did with Susan and the neighbors. But facing that woman, who exuded truth and power, I could not lie. I just lowered my eyes to my calloused hands and remained silent, a silence that screamed louder than any confession. Victoria did not push. She did not force me to speak. She simply understood. She saw the shadow on my face, the hunched posture of someone carrying the weight of the world, and she squeezed my hand firmly, a gesture of support that disarmed me. That handshake was not from client to manicurist. It was from woman to woman, a transfer of strength that made me want to cry right there, in the middle of the salon. She said life is too short for us to live by halves, to accept less than we deserve, and every word of hers felt like an arrow piercing my complacency. I refocused on painting her nails to hide my emotion, choosing the blood-red polish she had requested, but my hands trembled slightly, betraying my nervous state. She noticed, and in a quick, smooth motion, placed her other hand over mine, stopping my work, holding my fingers affectionately. The touch of her skin on mine stopped time. I felt her heat, the scent of her woody perfume growing stronger. and for a moment I forgot we were in a public salon in Seattle. Our faces were close, separated only by the narrow little table, and I could see the golden flecks in the irises of her eyes. I could see her breathing subtly alter the rhythm of her chest beneath the silk blouse. There was a magnetic tension there, an attraction that went beyond admiration, something physical and urgent that terrified and fascinated me in equal measure. Me, Rachel, the dull, betrayed wife, was being desired? That question hammered in my head, fighting against my low self-esteem. Susan cleared her throat loudly at the next table, momentarily breaking the spell, reminding us that we were not alone, that curious, malicious eyes were watching us. Victoria slowly withdrew her hand, but without rushing, as if she wanted to prolong the contact until the last possible second, and gave me a complicit smile, completely ignoring the other woman's presence. I went back to painting her nails, but now every brushstroke felt like a caress, every movement loaded with a new intention. While the polish dried, we watched each other in the reflection of the side mirror, exchanging a silent conversation that required no words, where her curiosity met my neediness. She praised my work, said I had a gift, that my hands were firm yet delicate, and that I should value my talent more. Hearing that from an executive, someone who understood quality, inflated my ego, made me feel capable of anything. When I finished, she inspected the red nails against the light, approving the result with a satisfied nod, and said it had been years since she felt so well taken care of. She began rummaging through her imported leather purse for her wallet, and the atmosphere of goodbye started to weigh heavy in the air, an anticipated anguish of seeing her walk out that door and take away all the light she had brought in. I wanted to ask her to stay longer, wanted to invent another cuticle to trim, anything not to return to my gray reality. She pulled out a $100 bill, an amount far above the price of the service, and when I reached for my purse to find change, she gently held my wrist, stopping my movement. The touch of her fingers on the sensitive skin of my wrist made my heart race again, beating erratically against my ribs. She told me to keep the change, that it was for the conversation and the care, but her look said it was for something much deeper, something we were still going to discover together. She stood up from the chair with the same elegance with which she had arrived, putting her heavy coat back on as if donning armor to face the outside world. I stood there frozen, holding the $100 bill against my chest like a sacred treasure, immediately feeling an emptiness grow in the space she had occupied. The scent of her perfume still lingered in the air, mixed with the smell of the rain battering the front window, and I wished I had the power to stop time, to freeze that moment where I felt seen and valued. Victoria grabbed her purse and walked to the door, but before opening it to step out into the storm, she stopped and turned slowly, catching me staring at her like someone who had just had the rug pulled out from under them. She smiled, a different smile from the previous ones, more open, more provocative, and said loud and clear, so that even gossipy Susan could hear, that she had loved the service and the company. But then, she lowered her voice, making the next sentence intimate, almost a whisper that traveled across the room and hit my heart dead center. She said, "Well, Rachel, now you have my personal number on your phone. The ball is in your court. It is your turn to call me." That phrase struck me like lightning. It was not scheduling a follow-up. It was not the courtesy of a satisfied client. It was a challenge, an open invitation for something I did not even have the courage to name. She winked one last time, opened her black umbrella, and stepped out into the gray Seattle rain, getting into the luxury car that pulled away smoothly, leaving me alone with my small reality. The salon remained silent for about 3 seconds after her departure, until Susan erupted in a shrill cackle, asking if I had become a high-end escort or if I was doing charity work for a needy sugar mommy. Her venom dripped from every word, trying to diminish what had just happened, trying to turn that magical moment into something dirty and ridiculous. I looked at Susan, at her mocking face, and for the first time I did not feel the urge to justify myself or lower my head. I felt pity for her bitterness. I tucked the money into the pocket of my smock, feeling the paper crumple in my sweaty hand, and answered with a calm I did not know I possessed, saying she was just a polite client, something Susan was not used to seeing. I turned my back and went to the break room to drink water, needing a minute to process the whirlwind of emotions churning in my stomach. My hands were shaking so much I spilled a little water on my blouse, but I didn't even care. My mind was hooked on that phrase. Your turn to call me. The rest of the day went by in a blur. I saw 3 more clients, did nails, trimmed cuticles, chatted about soap operas and recipes. But my body was on autopilot while my soul was far away, caught up in the possibility of that invitation. Every time my phone vibrated in my pocket, I felt an electric shock, wondering if I should message her now, or wait, or if I should delete her number and pretend nothing happened to protect my soft heart. The doubt was a sweet torture, an agony that made me feel alive. When my shift ended and I closed out the register, the rain had let up, leaving only puddles reflecting the streetlights. I walked to the bus stop feeling the weight of my routine settle back onto my shoulders, the weight of going back home, back to Roger, back to the life that no longer fit me. But now I had a secret tucked away in my pocket, an ajar exit door that depended solely on my courage to be thrown wide open. On the crowded bus, I squeezed the phone in my hand, opening the chat from the day before, rereading her message, staring at her mysterious profile picture. The cursor blinked on the white screen, waiting for me to type something, anything. But fear paralyzed me. The fear of rejection. The fear that I was misinterpreting everything. The fear of what would happen if I actually let myself experience this. I typed a hi and deleted it. I typed, "Did you like your nails?" and deleted it, feeling like a silly, insecure teenager. I arrived home, and reality slapped me in the face. The sink was full of lunch dishes Roger hadn't washed, and he was lying on the couch, in the same work clothes, smelling of sweat and beer. He did not even lift his head when I walked in, just grumbled that dinner wasn't ready, and he was hungry. I looked at him, at the man I once loved, or thought I loved, and I felt a profound disgust, a physical revulsion at being in the same room as him. I went to the bedroom to change my clothes, and looking in the closet mirror, I saw the red lipstick was still there, a little faded but still visible, a mark of the woman I had been for a few hours that morning. I ran my finger over my lips, remembering Victoria's gaze on my mouth, and a wave of heat rushed through my body. I did not want to take off that lipstick. I did not want to go back to being the servant wife. I wanted to be the Rachel that Victoria saw. That night, lying in the cold bed next to my snoring husband, I could not sleep. I stared at the dark ceiling, listening to the cars driving on the wet street, with my phone hidden under my pillow. Her phrase echoed in my head like a mantra, "Your turn to call me," and I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that I would not be able to ignore that call for much longer. The seed of rebellion had been planted, and the Seattle rain was making it sprout entirely too fast. The days that followed were a slow, silent torture, where the euphoria of meeting Victoria was slowly buried by the raw reality of my domestic life. I lived in a state of suspension, checking my phone every 5 minutes, drafting mental messages I never had the courage to send, while the routine swallowed me back into invisibility. But something had changed. The blindfold had fallen from my eyes, and now, every flaw in my marriage that I used to ignore to survive seemed magnified by a painful magnifying glass. It was on a Thursday night that the house of cards finally collapsed, confirming that female intuition never fails, no matter how hard we try to silence it. Roger came home later than normal, claiming he had worked overtime at the factory. But as soon as he walked through the door, the smell hit me like a slap in the face. It wasn't the smell of grease or work sweat. It was a cloying scent of cheap perfume mixed with menthol cigarettes, a smell that clung to clothes and the soul. He tried to walk straight to the bathroom, avoiding my gaze, with that guilty rush of someone who needs to wash away the evidence of a crime in the shower. I was in the kitchen, warming up the dinner he wasn't even going to eat, and I felt my blood run cold in my veins. a mixture of nausea and humiliation that made me drop the wooden spoon into the pot. I always knew. But having the olfactory confirmation right there in the middle of my living room was as if he were laughing in my face, at my loyalty, at my stupidity. When he stepped out of the shower, a towel around his waist and his hair wet, he came with that smooth talk of someone trying to cover their tracks, asking if there was a game on television. I looked at him, at the neck I used to kiss affectionately, and I saw a red mark, small, almost imperceptible near the collarbone, but to my trained eyes, it screamed like a neon sign. He noticed my fixed stare and pulled the towel up, covering his neck with a nervous movement, and rudely asked what I was staring at, if I had lost something on his face. I did not have the strength to fight. I did not have the strength to scream and throw plates at the wall like I saw on soap operas. My pain was silent, an implosion that destroyed everything inside without making a sound outside. I replied that it was nothing, that I was just tired, and served his plate with hands trembling with suppressed anger. He ate quickly, without complimenting, without thanking me, and went to bed, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the dirty dishes and my dignity in shreds. As I washed the dishes, the tears began to fall, hot and salty, mixing with the dish soap suds. I cried over the injustice. I cried over the lost years taking care of a man who traded me for any cheap fling. I cried over feeling trapped, penniless, without a home of my own, dependent on that traitor for a roof over my head. The feeling of helplessness was suffocating. I wanted to pack my bags and disappear, but where would I go? To my elderly mother's house in the countryside? To a rented room earning the pittance I made? I walked into the bedroom, walking on eggshells, and lay on the edge of the bed, as far away from the heat of his body as possible, feeling a physical disgust at hearing his peaceful breathing. He slept the sleep of the unjust, guiltless, remorseless, while I lay there awake, consumed by anxiety and sadness. I stared at the dark ceiling and asked myself what I had done wrong to deserve this, why I was not enough, why I had to endure this humiliation in silence. It was in the early hours of the morning, listening to the rain batter the bedroom window as if the sky were weeping with me, that the memory of Victoria came rushing back with full force. I remembered her touch, her look of admiration, the phrase, "Your turn to call me," and what previously seemed like a distant dream now felt like a life preserver in a stormy sea. If he could betray me, if he could seek comfort and pleasure outside the home, why did I have to play the saint? Why did I have to save my loyalty for someone who didn't even deserve my contempt? I grabbed my phone from under the pillow, brightness turned all the way down, and opened her picture again. Staring at that mysterious face like an oracle, the anger began to transform into courage. That crazy courage of someone who has nothing left to lose. I did not want revenge in a bad way. I wanted justice. I wanted to feel alive, desired, important. Everything Roger had denied me for years. I thought about sending the message right then, at 3 o'clock in the morning, but the fear of seeming desperate held me back. But the decision was already made in my wounded heart. I was no longer going to accept this life passively. I was going to play his game, but by my rules, and with a partner he could never imagine I could have. I fell asleep crying, the phone clutched to my chest, dreaming of a luxury car taking me far away from that damp, sad house. When I woke up the next morning, with puffy eyes and a heavy soul, I knew that day would be different. I was not just going to survive another day of humiliation. I was going to react. The day dawned gray again, matching my mood. And when Roger left for work without even saying goodbye, slamming the door, it was the final straw. I looked at the closed door and promised myself that this would be the last time I cried over him. I washed my face, took a deep breath, and felt that urgency swell inside me, the physical need to talk to her, to hear her voice, to be saved. It was Saturday night, that cruel hour where loneliness seems to weigh double for the unhappy. The rain in Seattle was falling in torrents, hammering against the thin roof of my house with a deafening noise that drowned out any peaceful thoughts. Roger had just left, fabricating a flimsy excuse about playing ball with the guys from work, even in that downpour, and stepped out smelling way too good for someone about to sweat on a court. I stood at the door, watching his motorcycle disappear around the flooded street corner, feeling that tightness in my chest of someone who knows she is being played for a fool, but has nowhere to run. I walked back into the empty living room, and the silence of the house screamed in my ears, competing with the sound of the rain. I looked at the peeling walls, at the furniture financed in so many installments I had lost count, and I felt a terrible claustrophobia, as if those walls were closing in to crush me. I was alone, on a Saturday night, carrying 37 years on my back, and the bitter sensation that my life was over before it had even truly begun. I sat on the couch, hugged an old throw pillow, and let the crying come. An ugly, sobbing cry of someone tired of being strong, of someone tired of pretending everything is okay. I cried over the humiliation. I cried over the fear of the future, but mostly, I cried because I wanted to be loved, wanted to be cared for, wanted to be seen. And in the midst of that despair, the image of Victoria flashed in my mind like a lighthouse in the middle of a dark storm. I picked up my phone with trembling, tear-stained hands and opened her chat. The online beneath her name glowed like an invitation, a green light telling me to move forward. I knew it was crazy. I knew she was probably at some fancy dinner, drinking expensive wines with interesting people, and that I was just the suburban manicurist bothering her on the weekend. But the pain was so intense it overcame the embarrassment. I needed a lifeboat, and she was the only person in the world who seemed to have one to offer me. I started typing, deleted, typed again. What would I say? Hi, my husband is cheating on me and I'm lonely? No, too pathetic. Hi, let's do your nails? No, too fake. I took a deep breath, trying to control the shaking in my fingers, and decided to be honest, but without losing the little dignity I had left. I wrote, Hi, Victoria. You said it was my turn to call. Does that invitation hold up on a rainy night where we just need to escape reality for a bit? I hit send before I could regret it, and tossed the phone onto the couch, covering my face with my hands, my heart pounding in my throat. Every second of waiting felt like an hour. I pictured her reading it, laughing, showing it to her rich friends, or worse, reading it and ignoring it, leaving me in the vacuum of my insignificance. The sound of the rain seemed to mock me, saying, I told you so, I told you so. But not even 2 minutes passed. The phone vibrated and I grabbed the device like it was a ticking time bomb. It wasn't a text message, it was a voice note. I pressed play with a trembling finger and brought the phone to my ear. Her voice, raspy and calm, filled the emptiness of my living room. Rachel, my invitations do not have an expiration date, and escaping reality is my specialty. Where are you? Send me your location. I am leaving right now. I listened to that audio 3 times, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. She did not ask the reason. She did not make excuses. She did not hesitate. She simply took control, like the powerful woman she was. I sent the location of my house, feeling a mix of relief and panic. She was coming. She, Victoria, the executive with the luxury car, was coming to my pothole-filled street, to my simple house. I ran to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face to reduce the swelling from crying, applied concealer to my deep dark circles, and of course, touched up the red lipstick. I looked at my reflection and saw a scared woman, but with a new shine in her eyes, the shine of adventure, of the forbidden. I changed out of my loungewear into tight jeans and a black blouse, grabbed my purse, and paced back and forth in the living room, waiting. 20 minutes later, I saw the bright LED headlights pierce the darkness of my street, illuminating the raindrops like crystals. Her car stopped right in front of my rusted gate, clashing completely with the humble neighborhood. I did not wait for her to honk. I locked the front door, leaving behind my sad life, Roger's scent, and my insecurities, and ran out into the rain. I opened the gate and slipped into her car quickly, escaping the freezing water. The interior of the vehicle was a world apart, warm, silent, smelling of new leather and that woody perfume that was already burned into my memory. Victoria was at the wheel, wearing a white linen shirt and dress pants, flawless as always. She turned to me, and her look held no judgment, no pity. It held welcome. She didn't say hi or how are you. She just looked into my eyes, saw the sadness I was trying to hide, and placed her hand over mine, which was freezing and resting in my lap. The warmth of her hand thawed me instantly. She smiled slightly and said, "Ready to be rescued?" I nodded, unable to speak because the knot in my throat returned. But this time, it was not from sadness. It was from gratitude. She put the car in gear and accelerated, taking me away from there, away from the pain, toward something I still did not know what it was, but desperately desired. The world outside felt like it was collapsing in water and wind, the windshield wipers working frantically to beat the force of the Seattle storm, but inside that armored car, an almost sacred silence reigned. The sound of the rain was muffled, turning into a distant, constant hiss, while the air conditioning maintained a perfect temperature that dried my damp clothes and warmed my goosebump-covered skin. I sank into the soft leather seat, taking in the smell of the new car mixed with her perfume, and for the first time in days, my shoulders relaxed, as if I had entered a sanctuary where the world's pain could not reach me. Victoria drove with impressive calm, one hand resting lightly on the leather-wrapped steering wheel, guiding that massive machine through flooded streets with the confidence of someone who knows exactly where she is going. She did not turn on the radio, respecting my moment, letting the sound of our breathing and the rain fill the space. I watched her profile illuminated by the yellow glow of the streetlights flashing by, admiring the firmness of her jawline, her concentrated gaze, and I felt small, a lost girl who had just been found by a real woman. After a few minutes of driving aimlessly, just distancing ourselves from my neighborhood and my misery, she broke the silence with that voice that seemed to hug you from the inside out. Without taking her eyes off the road, she asked softly what had happened to extinguish the light she had seen in my eyes at the grocery store. The question was asked without morbid curiosity. It was an offering to listen, a safe space for me to unload the weight I had been carrying all alone. I tried to answer, but my voice caught in my throat, choked by a cry that had been trapped for far too long. I took a deep breath, trying not to fall apart, but the safety she exuded broke down my defenses. With a trembling voice, I let out the sentence that defined my torment. I said my husband was cheating on me, that he had gone out in this rain to meet someone else, and that I was there, alone, knowing everything and doing nothing. Saying it out loud, to another person, turned the pain into shame. I felt humiliated admitting my passivity, admitting that I was the deceived wife everyone pitied behind her back. I lowered my head, unable to look at her, waiting to hear some generic advice or a veiled judgment about how I should have taken better care of myself. But Victoria did not say anything immediately. I just saw her hand grip the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles turning white, in a silent demonstration of anger on my behalf. She kept driving for a few more blocks, and pulled onto a deserted, tree-lined street near an old square where the trees swayed violently in the wind. She parked the car in a dimly lit spot, creating an atmosphere of absolute intimacy, shielded by the curtain of water running down the windows. She turned off the engine, but left the auxiliary power on, letting the dashboard illuminate our faces with a soft, bluish light. Victoria unbuckled her seatbelt and shifted sideways in her seat, facing me completely, with a serious, intense expression that made me hold my breath. She said I should not feel ashamed for someone else's lack of character, that his betrayal said a lot about him and absolutely nothing about me. Her words were firm, but the tone was of such sweetness that it made me cry again. But this time, it was a cry of relief, of finally being understood. I poured it all out, talked about my financial dependence, the fear of being homeless, how I felt old and disposable at 37, a neighborhood nail tech with no future. I told her how I washed his clothes, smelling of another woman, how I served dinner, swallowing my rage, and how I felt like a coward for not leaving the very first time. I vomited all my insecurities into her lap, and she listened to every word without interrupting, validating my pain with her eyes. While I talked, gesturing nervously, Victoria reached out and held my hand, which was resting on the center console. Her touch was like an anchor holding me steady in the middle of my emotional storm. She stroked the back of my hand with her thumb, a simple caress that sent waves of heat up my arm. She said that strength is not about never falling down, but knowing who we are when we get back up, and that she saw a much stronger woman in me than I could see in myself. The rain outside picked up intensity, hammering the roof of the car like stones, isolating us completely from the rest of the world. In that luxurious little cubicle, there was only me and her, my pain and her compassion. I looked at her, my eyes wet, and asked softly what I should do, because I was lost, with no map, no compass. Victoria slowly released my hand and brought her fingers to my face, wiping away a tear rolling down my cheek with a tenderness I never received from Roger in 10 years of marriage. The touch of her skin on my cheek made time stop. I closed my eyes for a moment, absorbing that affection, feeling my heart change its rhythm, moving from the beat of despair to the beat of anticipation. She brought her face closer to mine, close enough for me to smell the fresh mint of her breath mixed with that intoxicating perfume. Her eyes gleamed in the dim light, fixed on my lips, and then moving up to my eyes, burning with intensity. She whispered that there were only 2 paths for a woman in my situation, and that I needed to choose one tonight, before getting out of this car. I was paralyzed by her proximity, feeling the heat of Victoria's body radiating toward mine in that confined space. The rain outside seemed to have built a liquid wall separating us from everything else, and her voice sounded low and dangerous as she explained the options. She said I could continue being the victim, pack my bags and leave the house with nothing, relying on charity, or I could balance the scales, pay him back in the exact same currency, and discover who I really was when I wasn't being the perfect wife. The idea of revenge, of cheating back, made my heart race. But soon my chronic insecurity spoke louder, that cursed voice Roger had planted in my head for years. I lowered my eyes, embarrassed, and whispered with a choked voice that it was impossible, asking with all the sincerity of my wounded soul who would ever want me. I told her I was a 37-year-old woman, with stretch marks, with hands worn out from working so hard, an ordinary woman nobody looked twice at on the street. I felt so small, so invisible, that the idea of being desired felt like a bad joke, something that did not belong in my gray world. It was in that moment that her silence became dense, loaded with an energy that made the hair on my arms stand up. Victoria did not reply with empty words of comfort. She placed her hand under my chin and lifted my face firmly, forcing me to meet her eyes, which were shining in the shadows of the car. She scanned my face, her gaze dropping to my mouth, and said in a hoarse whisper that she wanted me, that she had driven across the entire city in a downpour because she couldn't get my image out of her head. Before I could process the shock of that confession, before I could breathe, she closed the distance between us. Her kiss was not timid or hesitant. It was acclaim, urgent and hungry, tasting of mint and repressed desire. The instant her lips touched mine, soft and experienced, the wall of fear I had built over years crumbled like a sandcastle at high tide. I closed my eyes and surrendered, instinctively bringing my hands to her neck, feeling the silk of her shirt and her warm skin, returning that kiss with an intensity I didn't even know existed inside me. The sound of the torrential rain beating on the roof of the car mixed with our heavy breathing, creating a chaotic and perfect symphony, while the windows of the luxury vehicle fogged up completely, hiding us from the world. We stayed there, lost in time, exploring every sensation, every touch, rediscovering my own body through her hands that held me with possessiveness and affection. When we finally pulled apart, gasping for air, the silence returned. But now it was an electric, complicit silence. I looked in the rearview mirror and almost didn't recognize myself. My red lipstick was smudged, my hair was messy, but my eyes shone with a life I thought had died. I finally looked like a woman who was loved. Victoria smiled, seeing my state, brushed her hand over my face to wipe a little of the lipstick with her thumb, and said, in a deep voice, that I was much more beautiful than I thought, and that I should never doubt my power again. That phrase was my absolution, my baptism by fire. She started the car and drove me back home, driving slowly, holding my hand the whole way. When she pulled up to my gate, the rain had slowed to a fine drizzle. I stepped out of the car not as the betrayed wife who ran away crying, but as a woman who had a delicious secret and a powerful new ally. I walked into the house, saw Roger sleeping on the couch with his mouth open, and instead of sadness, I felt a calm superiority. The war had begun, and I was no longer unarmed. If you got chills from this ending and want to know how Rachel will use this new power, and what will happen when her husband finds out who the mysterious new friend is, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. Click the subscribe button and turn on the bell, because part 2 comes with a plot twist that will leave your jaw on the floor. And if you cannot handle the suspense and want to hear the continuation before everyone else, become a VIP member of the channel. By clicking join, you support our work and guarantee exclusive early access to the next chapters of our forbidden romances. Do not miss out on this revenge.